Good day. Welcome to the Day of the Net podcast. Today we have a very, very special guest.
Magician slash mentalist, Giorgio Rosa, not to be confused with the famous Italian engineer.
Who died in 2017, according to Wikipedia.
Yes.
Welcome to the podcast, Giorgio Rosa.
Giorgio.
You look very attractive today. Yeah. And I'm not even gay.
Well, you know, I was going with the clown theme for Mr. Malone.
Oh, very good.
You know, but I don't like clowns, so I did the evil clown because, you know, I want to spread the word against the evil.
How are you today, Giorgio?
That is clowning.
That's awesome, Giorgio. Could you tell us about your early years? Where were you born and where did you grow up, or weren't you born at all?
Are you in?
Yeah. Well, so Giorgio Rosa was and you know, the master of all arts, some juggling. Juggling doesn't quite work. The idea is more or less based in alchemy. So I'm an agent. I'm something that connects to different spirits. I'll connect you with what you need, and that's the idea. So it's the variety act. It's the sideshow act. It's bringing it all together and what it needs to be in that moment.
Right.
Using various skills, various things around you, various methods, techniques. But it's what needs to be presented in that moment is presented.
And where did this all begin, or did it just happen?
Yeah, I think it's this concept of mystery performance and wanting to connect with something deeper in the arts than just, well, I'm an actor who, I'm a stand-up comedian who, I'm a singer who does this, and kind of gets involved in a machine. There are people like, I think, yourselves who want to connect with something deeper. Mm-hmm. And that's when you start to really have change, right? When you start to connect something deeper. So how can we use art instead of acting our skills to really to elevate not just us, but to raise new questions, something speak to a more unconscious level. So that's where the inspiration's kind of coming from.
And could you talk to us about your influences? How do you influences?
Yeah, sure. So influences. You know, I think you and I spoke about this, Ed. You're really into meditation, aren't you?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I think meditation is a real place of influence for me. It's kind of where it's based in. It's like where are we actually coming from? Where are we actually going? And then is there an us that's going anywhere? So that is like the basic approach. But then how do you translate that, right? Do you write about meditation? Do you speak about it? Do you teach it to others, or do you use it in your performance? Do you use it in what you do?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So do you believe that you can like change people's lives with what you do?
Oh yes, the great master Giorgio Rosa through his 21-day black magic program. Although I'm thinking of changing that. I don't like that term. I was using that black magic term, but
oh yes, could you explain what black magic is? The origins of black magic?
Sure. So okay, so let's explain this first, the audience, and why it's really suspect. So, for example, I was putting a show together. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the show has about 3 or 4 different acts based on the concept of voodoo.
Right.
Pretty standard theme in magic, right? In magic shows, voodoo. And what do we associate voodoo with? We associate it with kind of evil, scary, the devil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, that's I think the basic association the public has. You look at the James Bond movies, you look at whatever. So I did some research for this particular act.
Okay,
and
so 1 second, Giorgio. Just for our listeners who are watching you, you're holding. What are you holding? Can you describe what you're holding?
I'm holding a voodoo doll here.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
Yes, so this is a voodoo doll, and it comes with. There's a series of voodoo doll magic tricks. You know, there's like these voodoo doll cards.
Nice.
So basically, you know, there's a series of tricks, and this is, you know, you see these on television, you see these wherever, you know, this is a common theme in magic. So I decided, well, my whole thing is about, and I'll tell you what I'll really my influences later, kind of exposing things that are misunderstood.
Right.
So particularly in spirituality, you have things like black magic, Wicca, whatever, misunderstood, and people kind of castigate them and with this, label them as a certain thing. And I think that's where danger lies, and I think that also gives rise to a lot of misunderstandings. I think we discussed conspiracy theories. I think it gives rise to a lot of conspiracy theories and a lot of unnecessary voices in a time when we need clarity. So that's kind of my thing about bringing awareness to that. So I did some research into the voodoo doll, and and sticking the pins in the voodoo doll. Well, it turns out that the voodoo dolls were a form of medicine that came from France, and they were combined with voodoo medicine, which was actually like medicine from West African herbalism. And these doctors had advanced knowledge of herbs in the Caribbean at the time. So what they would do is they would stick pins in the doll in the places that represented the patient's pain points.
Right.
So yeah, it was that basically they represented the pain points, and they stuck pins in the doll, so they had a record of where the patient had pain in the past. So when they came back to the doctor, they would have a physical representation, like a chart. And then and maybe different colored pins for different colored treatments or times they were given treatment. So this was actually an advanced scientific, for the time, technology. That was because it was used by mostly doctors of African descent, was then said, oh, this is evil. We have to, we can't be letting them be the doctors, right?
Right.
So it was framed as being evil. So then I think we have to question, and whatever we do, I think we have to do research, and then if there is something like systemically racist in the system, we have to question it. So when I do this trick, I actually give that whole history, and saying, you may think the voodoo doll is evil, and it's kind of a bit of a lecture, but it also shows that, like, yeah, we have some really assumptions about just cultural icons or cultural symbols that are really based very, very deeply in racism.
Indeed.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
What are your views on Jesus?
Personally, I'm not a Christian, so my views on Jesus are this. That's a good, interesting question. I kind of believe there are masters, like meditation masters, like clowning masters, like theatrical masters, and Jesus may be one of those masters, or one of those.
Calling it a clown master.
The clown guru.
You pointed.
He's the clown master. I dubbed the clown master.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Dave. All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I think there are different forms of him, or different ways he teaches, and they connect to different people in different ways. But I don't think that's for everybody. And I think the issue I have with people who really connect with Jesus sometimes is did you ever hear of him? Yeah, everyone's heard of him by now. We've all been exposed to him. You can tone it down. I think there are many voices and many teachers, and just because one doesn't resonate with you doesn't mean that, oh, there's something wrong with me.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Go on, Ed. Yeah.
I was going to say, what was your first memory of working as a mentalist / magician?
Yeah, so I started off with meditation, and I started off with kind of like Buddhist style meditation, pretty standard stuff.
Right.
As like a base. One thing I found, it's always a problem, right? You find something and you get the problem, and you have to solve the next problem, you have to solve the next problem, solve the next problem, constantly solving. So the problem with that I found was it's hard to express those kind of embodied states of consciousness. So then you need a language to do that. So sometimes somewhere along the line, kind of like healing stuff came in. And then later, the psychic stuff came in, and I found it can be a good way to do performance. It's amenable to performance. So yeah, it kind of started out with meditation, and then kind of came into this, how this arose.
Right. And, yeah. How long have you been in New York, Mr. Rosa?
I was born in New York.
Okay, so you're a native New Yorker.
Born in New York, in Queens. Then so my whole life until I was like in my early 20s, I was in Japan for 4 years. 5 years, sorry, 5 years.
Wow.
Lived in Georgia for a little while, spent some time in Texas, then back in New York for 8-9 years now.
Right. Tell us about the 4 years in Japan. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, about 5 years in Japan. So that, yeah, I was really interested in just at the time I'd studied Japanese, and you study things and you don't use them, and it's like, oh, I have that little bit of knowledge, and I don't know what you guys think about U.S. culture, but maybe having done a lot of work in Europe, I can see one critique Europeans have about Americans is they always say what they can do. They brag a lot, read a lot of, oh, I can do this, I can do that. So I really wanted to say, well, let me take Japanese language, culture, and let me go kind of deep there. And to go deep, you kind of have to spend some time. So it was a year in college and then a few years after grad school.
Mm-hmm. How did you find the culture over there?
Oh, I love the culture. It's very different, of course. So yeah, I got into studying. I got into I was doing some work with an arts organization that presents the Japanese arts. They did some tour guide, helped arrange tours. Did quite a few things actually to make money. So yeah, the culture is great. Japan is a great place. It's an interesting country now because people, I think, when they think of Japan of 30 years ago, kind of Blade Runner. It's not like that anymore. It's more like a Western European country, really. People, in terms of people's values, in terms of their lifestyle, in terms of demographics, in terms of intermarrying. It's very much like it's like a Germany, England. Mm-hmm. It feels a little more like that.
Right. Yeah.
It's still an Asian country. It's still, it still has a very warm climate in the summer. There's many things culturally that are also very interesting, but the way people live today is very different than I think what most people imagine it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And like this persona that you have, this Giorgio Rosa person that you are, where did it come from?
Yeah, so this has been developing over the past few years, and it just develops as it develops, and kind of as I work with it, more stuff comes from it.
Yes. Yes.
I don't really follow a 10 steps to.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't. If this has to go, this has to go.
Right.
If what has to go?
No, if the character Giorgio Rosa has to go for some reason, it has to go. I'm not like I can't be attached to it or try to control it.
Why Giorgio Rosa? Why this Italian name?
Engineer.
Because I found him interesting. It's funny. I've been interested and I've never learned it. I've tried, but in this language, Esperanto, are you familiar with this language? This kind of like made-up language.
Right.
Yeah.
It was basically a language that was made up. And
explain what that is for our viewers, please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So it was this language that was made up by this guy, Dr. Zamenhof, who was an ophthalmologist in Poland and spoke Polish and Yiddish and German, but people didn't speak the same languages. So he created a very simple kind of Italian-sounding language. And millions of people learned this language, including George Soros. His native language is Esperanto.
Oh, wow. George, so
he's one of the few people in the world that was born speaking Esperanto.
Tell our audience who George Soros is.
Oh, he's this financier, hedge fund manager who was, he was kind of, some very rich guy.
Yeah.
Very influential too. And I think a number of many conspiracy theories, unfortunately. But he was born, his native language is Esperanto.
That's so interesting. Wow.
Yeah, his parents were like idealists. They were like classical European idealists. So Giorgio Rosa, this Italian engineer, he created a little country for a few days. I think the Italian was the last battle the Italians ever won. They took it over. But there was an Esperanto-speaking republic called Roseland. And I found it really interesting because I have a family, I'm part Italian, I have a family name is De Rosa,
right?
Which is kind of the same clan, Rosa, De Rosa, De Rosa. And then Giorgio is the name that was given to me by some Russian healer dude that I hang out with sometimes, George. So it snapped, and then I said, okay, I'm going to do this character for a while now.
Cool. It's interesting.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a mentor?
I work with I work with, you know, the guy Tommy Burnett.
Oh, our first ever guest.
Yes.
I work with a few different people. So like for him, I actually study the mentalism stuff, where I work with him on the mentalism stuff, develop it, because you know he has a certain amount of experience, and then he introduced me to another mentor named Kenton Nepper, who's in Arizona, but I'm taking his class. Tommy, I think a lot of big magicians go to him. So really transformative stuff. I'll send you the links. You can put them up. And then I work with a writer, actually, because I don't like writing, and I don't consider myself a comedian. I've done stand-up. I've done the writing. It's not my thing, really, like traditional jokes, telling stand-up comedy. So I work with a writer, and we're working on a show right now.
Oh, and tell us about the show, please.
Yeah, sure. So it's going to be taking some concepts from mentalism, magic, deception, some sideshow kind of. I think it's hard to do an actual show about sideshow right now without doing social commentary, or without having a discussion around disability, or having a discussion around the history. So I think that's something that's important that we all consider now when we present things. Are we doing it mindfully? Are we doing it consciously? You know, are we doing it in a way that's respectful enough? Are we considering the history, if there was a history of oppression, and kind of exposing it, dealing with it? You know, right. Without having to be, you know, for or against it, but just showing it for what it was.
And which specific oppression do you mean?
Well, in the case of freak show or sideshows, we're talking about oppression of people who are born genetically different, right? Because a lot of these, if you're not familiar with the history, there's a few different shows at the sideshow. It's called the 10-in-1 show. So my show starts out as kind of a geek. This is the character of a geek, which was the kind of worst act in a freak show. It was a person that would eat like glass or drink motor oil, bite the head off a chicken. And usually it was somebody who was either an alcoholic or a heroin addict or some kind of opium addict who was kind of at the end of his rope. And he was like an older carny. So it starts out with that. And this geek gets a proposal from Giorgio Rosa. He becomes a mentalist, but he kind of abuses his power, has a fall from grace. There's a few historical references in there. It's full of a lot of tricks. It's kind of film noir for an adult audience, but that's what we're working on now.
Okay. And what's the title of that?
It's called Giorgio Rosa Presents, and we're going to have a few different variations on that.
Awesome. Exciting. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Could you talk about doing mentalism live in front of an audience and working with people, and have you any interesting anecdotes about those interactions going well or going not so well or whatever, you know?
Okay, so I want to say this first and foremost. Mentalism is a performance art. It's a form of performance. You can go to, you know, Brunhilde the psychic with her big turban on and, you know, the cigarette smoke. And, you know, the 40-year-old mentalist in Reno, Nevada, who just has your fortune told. And whoever you go to, they're performers. They're giving you a performance. It's like a close-up magic performance. It's like a, you know, going to a jazz club and requesting a song and giving the singer a good tip. It's nothing different than that. It's a boardwalk performance. So no matter however spiritual someone claims to be, they're always performing for you as a psychic entertainer. Right. They're always that character.
Yes.
And that's important because psychics cannot give out medical advice. They cannot actually give out negative, they can't give out like negative symptoms, or they can't scare the audience because it's not fair, because the character is presumed to know more. And that's the thing you have to understand about psychic characters. They're presumed to know more than you. So it's kind of like, it's a bit of an asshole of a character, right? Because like, if you want to abuse that, you just come across as an asshole. So the thing with, hold on, let me see if I can, here it is. So the thing with the psychic characters, you have to show that you're vulnerable. Yeah. So if you get something, just some props here, and okay, you have to show that you're vulnerable, so that, you know, if you get the crystal wrong.
Yes.
And when I stare into the crystal, I see a young Welsh boy, and you go, I'm not Welsh, I'm Irish, you know, like, you know, and I'll, but me mum's from Wales, you know. But you.
Oh. Ladies and gentlemen, for our listeners, he was holding a crystal ball.
Yes.
Yeah.
A small crystal ball.
Oh yeah, because this isn't a video. Okay, yeah. So it's for the listeners, it's a small crystal ball. I just may disappear.
Great.
Fantastic. What else is going on with you these days? So besides planning your show and upcoming projects, this is a strange time. We've just gone through the pandemic, and now the US is in a state of rioting and protesting and such. Like, how have you dealt with the last 4 months?
And 107,000, 108,000 now at this point dead.
Right.
Last I checked, which affects the lives of all the people around them exponentially. So we're going to the millions of people that are grieving.
But how has Giorgio Rosa personally dealt with all this?
Oh yeah, so there are times when it's a bit lonely, a bit isolating.
Sure.
I can, having kind of moved around a bit, and being an only child, I spent a lot of time alone. So I'm not so. It's not that bad for me, but I know for some people it's really bad. But even for me, I have my limits. I think connecting on Skype is always important, or connecting on Zoom.
Yes.
I think the problem right now is it's so difficult. Like, it's so difficult to plan anything. This is like the time where you even think you have a plan, you write it down. It's like, oh, that's not happening. So it's not easy to know where anything's going. Forget about live performance, like basic things like manufacturing, food supply chains. We're having real super systemic issues that we're not even thinking about. I mean, places like Yemen have millions of cases of cholera, the disease we controlled in the West in the mid 1800s, right? I mean, that was, if Corona really hits countries like that really hard, I mean, it could really, really wipe out, I mean, massive amounts of people under the poverty line. There's still a lot at stake beyond what our futures are as performance artists. I mean, there's so much more to it than that.
As somebody who does kind of psychic type work, is it possible for you to predict what's going to happen?
No. And then again, this is okay. So
not psychic.
It's a good question. I'll just cut you off because certain psychics have gotten in trouble for that in the past, especially ones that predict the market. There's a long history of that.
Could you name names?
I prefer not to, but
okay,
that's you can just look that up. And certain psychics have been well, you have, for example, Uri Geller.
Here we go.
In the 80s. Yeah, Uri Geller, who is still around and still sells jewelry, very blessed jewelry, and he apparently you can send your letters to him and he'll pray over them for free. Everyone send Uri Geller. Why not?
Yeah.
But is he real? Is he fake? Who knows? But certainly when he was under a controlled experimental situation several times, especially on Johnny Carson, he wasn't able to actually have the effect on bending metal. So, I may have a bent metal spoon here somewhere. I thought I did. The bending metal is a very simple trick. I mean, if that's something you could learn how to do in a second. So there are people have been definitely caught. And then I think you kind of get into Alex Jones conspiracy theory land with some of the characters. I think that kind of behavior makes a certain character develop of like, I'm under government control. They're controlling me right now. And you kind of look like the crazy conspiracy theorist.
For our audience, could you just explain to our audience what a conspiracy theory is?
Yeah.
In my opinion, a conspiracy theory could be true or false, but it's believing there is some kind of unknown backroom dealing, conspiring, breathing together plan that's not being revealed to the public and has to be found out. And of course, certain conspiracies are absolutely true. There's conspiracies between every day, all day. We have conspiracies within our families. There are conspiracies everywhere. But the question is, is that your first thing you go to? Is trying to make a big picture connection?
Right.
And I don't think it's particularly safe behavior, and I think it's addictive too. It's kind of like, I think it's an addictive behavior when you start really getting into conspiracies, and it makes, I think, the evidence of that is it makes people more isolated. They tend to withdraw into their rooms, into the front of their computers, spend more time just looking at a screen. And when you have that result, when that's the result of the behavior, it's kind of like an addiction at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. We kind of moved on when we were talking about something a few minutes ago. But I want you to share with our viewers what it's like share a bit more on what it's like doing mentalist work in front of a live audience.
Yeah, sure.
In the moment, and give us concrete examples of like.
Well, I could just give you. I could do a reading for you right here, right now. But, like I was saying, you have to be vulnerable because you don't. I was setting up the stage before. You have to kind of make sure you're that vulnerable character and not I'm a know-it-all psychic who has it all figured out.
Sorry, can I interrupt for 1 second with a question?
Yeah,
that's great. Like I guess to be more specific with my question, if, for example, you come up against an individual who's resistant to having work done on him or her, how do you navigate that?
I have a negative psychic character called Richard Ray who says, well, someone's not spiritually open, are they? He's from the South. That's right.
Yeah.
But he only, the thing I don't like about that character is he's very mean. So it gets old very quickly. There isn't much texture there. That's not mean. But if it comes out like that, but what I do is I generally say, oh, maybe the gods aren't working today. Curse you. Oh no, whatever. You improvise away from it. You try to go positive, I think. Good. You go, but sir, you have such a great aura around you. I think that's the way you end it. If you can end it that's the whole point. Can you end the show having someone feel good about themselves, even when you're wearing makeup like this?
Yeah.
And if you can pull that off, you can just do very simple readings for people. Numerology readings, spirit animal readings, very easy stuff.
Oh, so you're well versed in numerology and spirit animal stuff.
You don't have to be, but no, but there are many forms of numerology. In my system of numerology, yes, I am well versed, but there are many forms. And spirit animals, I get it by it's a good spiel you have. You get a good feel for how to talk to people in a way that keeps them interested in what you're saying, and you could be spouting nonsense.
Yeah.
Could you explain the basics of numerology to our viewers, listeners?
How far back do you want me to go?
Just break it down so they can understand.
Sure. It's the idea that, and it comes from ancient Greece, it comes from Plato, the idea that a certain number has a certain value. We can all know that. One, we can envision one is one banana, two apples, three oranges. But that they also have a certain essence or a certain flavor to them or a certain meaning. So, for example, the number 3 is the Trinity. It's a kind of completion. It also means going forward, going out into the world. In Japanese numerology, 5 means going out into the world. In Chinese numerology, 4 is an unlucky number. In Western numerology, it's 9 sometimes it's the unlucky number, or 6. So it's knowing different meanings. And when you get a number and it speaks to you, when you study these things, these numbers start to speak to you. Same with astrology. It's not that it exists or it doesn't exist. It's a symbolic language, and when you get well versed in it as you're giving a reading, the symbols may actually start revealing themselves to you.
Right.
So
I see.
It's almost like a mnemonic system, Ed, if you're acting.
Right.
But it's more improvisational.
Right.
Okay.
It's like if you were to have all of Shakespeare memorized and you could just improvise it.
Yes.
It's something like that. Not like that, but it's something like that where you have a whole set of ideas about numerology or astrology memorized, and you've studied them and you've observed them, and then it starts speaking through you.
Right.
And it's kind of cool when that happens. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens sometimes.
Do you notice numbers when you're walking down the street?
I am so learning disabled with numbers that I don't remember numbers. I sometimes do, but I'm more about words.
Right.
Words really get me.
Could you help me? I keep seeing the number 33.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Really? In what context are you seeing it?
I usually see it when I'm reading the news,
Wow.
Yeah.
33 is a good number. I think that was the number that Jesus Christ died, wasn't it? 33 and a third. He was resurrected, new life.
Yes.
right? That's the new life. The number 33 is also a magically very good number. Some secret societies have their 33rd degree, which is kind of the degree you earn when you've done a lot of good work in the world. That's the positive way to put it.
Okay.
You know, but secret societies use that. Western magic uses 33. It's also 2 triangles. It's delta. So it really, for you, that's interesting that you're picking up on that. And I would go with, make sure that when you see that symbol and you like it, that you associate it with positive emotion and positive feeling. Boom, boom. Because then every time you see it, it's going to be about you accomplishing something, you helping others, you putting yourself out there in the world.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Could you give us your views on like Freemasons and Freemasonry, or do you have opinions on that? Or?
Freemasonry. Yeah. So Freemasonry is it's kind of it's a fraternal organization, like the, what do you call them? The Lions Club, the
Right.
Kiwanis Club, the Knights of Columbus. This thing that distinguishes Freemasonry is you have to have a belief in a higher power. So it could be anything. It could even be a lower power, but it has to be another power. It could be, yes, I have a general belief in that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an atheist, you can't get in. That's the thing about Freemasonry. And then after that, it's more about, yes, doing some ceremonies and stuff, but I think helping others and participating and keeping the lodge running and helping other members. And so it's more of like a beneficent organization. And they do have some charities. I think what they learn is a system of symbolism that comes from ancient Greek mystery schools. And it's a bit of a conservative approach, but it's certainly a good like beginning step if you're interested in that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't believe any of the conspiracy theories at all. That's all nonsense.
Right.
You know.
I think most of the founding fathers of the United States of America were Freemasons. Is that right?
Yeah, they were. Yeah. And again, they kind of had this belief that all gods were kind of equal. So you could be any religion or any sect of Christianity, or you could be a Quaker. It didn't matter as long as you believed in something.
Right.
So they were kind of all free inquiry, free speech people.
Right.
So that's what it was about at that time.
And you do you dabble in Satanism as well? Is that one of the things you dabble in?
I don't. No, I don't.
Okay.
I no. I'm interested.
Just for fun? Just for fun? No.
No, no, I don't.
Okay.
Well, you know, because I don't dabble in Christianity.
I understand.
And I don't. You know, that's not my belief system. That's not what I resonate with. That's not. It's just so foreign to me that I don't like. I don't dabble with it with the opposite of something that I'm not playing around with. Mm-hmm. When I've looked into it, I felt like it's almost like, to me, just studying another religion. It's not like I have a feeling I want to do that. No, not at all. I think and why I kind of bring Satanism up in my performance art sometimes is because how misunderstood it is, and how much of a scapegoat it is.
Well,
and I think
and was that a pun? Was that pun intended? The goat part?
The goat. You know where the goat comes from?
The goat is a symbol.
One thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the Freemasons. We have the Freemasons worship the goat, right?
Yeah.
Well,
No.
Isn't Baphomet a goat? One of the symbols of Satanism.
Baphomet? The goat. Yeah. The scapegoat. Right. Baphomet's the goat. Right. He's the scapegoat. Right. That's what the whole left hand of God, the goat. The sheep, the lamb is at the right hand. It's all about, like good and evil, balancing good and evil. But the scapegoat, that was from the Bible. So I think in the Old Testament, they used to transfer the sins onto a goat and then release it into the desert to die. So they would transfer all the bad onto that, and then people take on the scapegoat role in society, right?
Yeah.
So scapegoating. So Satanism, dark magic gets scapegoated a lot of times. And it's turned into something that it's not. It's turned into a phenomena that it's not. There's a great book on this called Remembering Satan. And that book, if you've never seen it, it's about a case in a southern town, basically, where this girl claimed she was taken to she claimed under false testimony that she was taken to like a satanic cult in town, and that her father took her there, or her stepfather. And the guy basically said, maybe I did, and maybe I had no memory of this. And they were so programmed, they were so used to this worldview that there was Satanist all about that could control your mind, that people started confessing to things they never did. And half the town was was under this like mass, hysteria that there were Satanists around them. And this spread throughout the South and throughout parts of America where police chiefs were trained in how to look for Satanism. So they would have coerced testimonies from people saying that they had engaged in things they hadn't engaged in. So it actually is very relevant to what's happening today, because it's historic. But people were basically, it was a witch hunt against Satanism in the 80s and 90s. It was called Satanic Panic. And people from like anything from nursery schools to like hospitals were swept up in this. So it's very dangerous stuff. And I think raising awareness about it, a lot of people ask me questions after the shows and stuff, and talking about it, being able to dialogue is important.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, just on a kind of light note, or maybe not a light note, who knows? For our listeners who can't see your amazing makeup, what is the inspiration behind the
evil clown? I'm just. It's an anti-clown statement.
Okay.
Scare the kids.
But so there's on the right cheek there's an X, on the left there's what is it, 1? Is that 11?
There's a line. I just I kind of do this asymmetrical thing because it's a little scary. It's like asymmetrical.
Yeah.
So
you have on beads as well.
Yeah, it has some New Orleans beads.
Cool. And is there any significance to that?
No, I sometimes throw these out at shows.
Brilliant.
Do you have, like, if I can ask a practical question, as we're all artists, is it easy to make a living as a magician mentalist for you, or?
I do other things for work. I do other things for work.
Sure. Right.
So
what kind of other things?
I think.
Are you a
okay? So if I wanted to do like telephone psychic work, or really do that whole psychic reading thing, there are ways you can make money doing that, and there's work.
Right.
I've done some of that. It's a good way to develop yourself as a reader. I think I've given honest readings. It's not a way to make a living, really.
Sure.
But I think this act is there are enough people interested in this kind of work where you can do it more as a commercial enterprise maybe than as an artistic enterprise.
Right.
And that's the question.
The great thing is you can do it in different languages, right?
I speak a few, but I'm not comfortable enough doing this stuff in those languages now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think I actually like art for commercial purposes, because I think it forces you to consider the audience. You're into this, I know, Ed, and
Yes.
it forces you to also perform for the audience, to make them happy. Did they get what they paid for? They paid you $20. They paid you $35. They paid $10.
Sure.
They gave you their time. Are they happy?
Mm-hmm. Have you had? Could you talk to the audience about outer body experiences? Have you had them through the work?
Yeah.
And tell us about that process.
So, well, when you talk about this, some members of the audience may have their own outer body experience, because when you start bringing it up, it awakens things in other people psychically. So maybe they've had those experiences, as a lot of people have. But actually, yes, it happens sometimes. Usually when there's not a conscious memory of a performance, and when there's not really a conscious memory of the moment, that you were in the moment, or when you felt something overcoming you, as you start to revisit the same kind of spirits again, or the same kind of situations again, it becomes more automatic. Right. But at the beginning, it is my what I do is channeled. So it's always going to attempt to bring something else in.
Right.
I do myself too, but I mean, it's deliberately trying to do it.
Yeah.
Could you talk to us about like what kind of stuff can happen? Like, I know you mentioned like, you use like the fact that you're in the moment or whatever, but like, could you give us examples of things?
Yeah, I've lost consciousness before, so I've just like gone to states where I've lost kind of like just get like white light, or like lightheaded, or you still know you're there, but there's a moment where you're kind of like above the clouds and then you come back. So if you catch yourself in that's it actually does catch you by surprise.
Right.
Some psychics act that out, like we're perform, but it's happened a few times. So
Right.
and that you have to be careful of also, and chakras and all this stuff is real. So
Yes. Chakras.
if you, and this is a basic meditation thing, but if you open up the head chakra too much, this third eye chakra too much, and you're not ready,
yes,
you can feel like you're going insane, or it can go to your head, and you can become a very ego trippy about it, and then have a crash. So that's happened to me too. But or just like where you just feel like you don't know what's going on. So I think it's about taking it slow too. You have to. Everything's a process, and you can't force it. Right. I think the less you force it, the less of those kind of interruptions you have.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Go on.
Do you do any more questions about performance there, Ed?
Well, I
have more of a political question.
Dave, you go ahead.
Will I go ahead? Yeah. So I'm dying to hear, what do you think about this current thing we're going through in the US? We're recording this on June 5th. So the country's been rioting for over a week. We have marches, we have police brutality, we have a very divided country. What does Giorgio Rosa think about this?
Yeah.
What are your politics, Giorgio?
Left of center.
Okay.
Well,
on most issues, right of center on one or two issues.
Oh, interesting.
Not right of center, left of center, because it's about government intervention, but conservative about those one or two issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of those issues is, I think, about mental health, protecting people who are mentally ill,
yes.
and
yes,
making sure there are enough resources for them, and including, at times having to use restraint against people when they're dangerous to themselves or others. Really protecting their, using whatever it takes to medically intervene to protect the lives of somebody who's less vulnerable. That's an issue that I'm very conservative on, in that I don't believe it's right to allow people to be homeless when you could, over many interventions, help them to get to a path to some kind of housing or some kind of resources that they need.
Right.
And even if that takes aggressive interventions, like in Europe, you have social workers who can really, really, use power. I'm for that. I'm for state intervening to help people who have needs, disabled people. And in America, that's just, yes, in New York we have resources, but I've worked in the South, man, and that's bad. And I think this is about inequality at all levels. If you notice, people are saying Black Lives Matter because that's what I think is at the forefront. In terms of, if you look at just the numbers, I mean, it's obvious that who was affected most by the coronavirus? African American, absolutely, by far, population-wise.
Why do you think that is?
Oh, I think it's because of poverty. I think it's because of maybe many had to work in frontline service positions where they didn't have any choice, where they couldn't take off of work. I think it's because of, having to use public transportation. I think, nobody was giving them hotel rooms and saying, did you get sick today? You could take off today. I think that was because you see it affecting mostly African-American and Latino communities, primarily at the beginning, at least. People working at the front line of service healthcare industry, as people in nursing homes, adult homes, all these, you see that population, a large percentage of that population having to work when other people don't.
Right.
Delivery service people. And it really shows you too how we treat those people as a society.
For sure.
Who's we?
I mean, I include myself because I have the so-called, there is an idea of white privilege. There is an idea of just mass society. There is an idea of we overlook things. So we, including me as a society, we overlook discrimination. We overlook inequality to get through the day. We accept it.
Right. Well, speaking of that, like just to kind of double down on that question in a kind of a positive way.
Okay.
Whatever that. I mean, have you felt compelled to do something about this yourself, like as an artist with a lot of compassion, or have people reached out to you and say, hey, could you help with this or that? Or, you know what I mean? Is there anything that you can do?
I'm not personally getting involved as an artist. I don't really try to get involved politically as an artist.
Okay.
I
don't even mean that. I mean, like, just to kind of help people or whatever, you know. Like,
at this point, I'm not. At this point, I'm not. I've participated in things like just different petition things and, you know, contributing to different causes. But I think the bailout funds are great. I think any pro bono lawyer fund, any kind of public defender fund is just really wonderful.
But I guess what I'm intimating is I think it would be awesome, perhaps, if you did your mentalism work at this time, you know, to the people who are going through a lot of like difficulties, like make them, oh wow, it's like you know, an escape, if you will, maybe.
Yeah. I think that's important. You know, I have a lot of. One reason I haven't been too vocal or haven't done much as an artist is I'm a little bit. I don't want it to be self-indulgent. I don't think this is the time for self-indulgent art. Although.
Okay. But okay. Interesting.
Well, and the second thing is in doing mentalism. Like, I don't want to do mentalism work when 107,000 people are dying. I have to be cognizant of not scaring people, whatever, and also having a positive message. I want to make sure it's respectful. Mm-hmm. I also think that mentalism work dealing with the future and whatnot, it's a little. I don't want to add more harm or confusion at this time. I think, you know, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Fair enough.
Unless I'm obviously doing it in character where I'm, you know, it couldn't be serious.
Right. There's a question, unless you've any, I have one last one. Do you have any?
Go for it.
There's a question that we've been asking kind of consistently for the last couple of podcasts, and we've had interesting responses, and we wanted to ask you the same question. Regarding COVID, vaccine, yes or no? Would you take the vaccine?
Absolutely. Yes. 100%. 100%.
Tell us why you feel that.
Sure. I believe in vaccination. We've had a history of many, many people dying of, I mean, things like polio disease. Polio is under control. So, I mean, God, Lyme's disease. I mean, there's so many different hepatitis A, hepatitis B. You know, there's experimental vaccines for all kinds of viruses. I mean, we've really overcome so much, and I think that yeah, of course, the vaccines also protect others. I believe coronavirus is real. I think that we don't know that immunity is guaranteed if you're positive. You know, we don't know what that means. Vaccines, I think you're not doing it only for yourself, but you're also doing it for people in developing countries like Yemen, where millions of people have cholera and they don't have the resources to deal with coronavirus. People in, you know, rural Ethiopia, people in rural areas of America. That's what you're doing it for. So I think that's what you're, even when you wear masks, that's what you're really doing it for. Yes, you're doing it for yourself and people in New York City, but you're also doing it for people in Afghanistan or Pakistan, you know.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Some people say that, you know, the flu vaccine doesn't work. You know, some people have gotten the flu vaccine. Yeah. They've still gotten the flu after it. Would you still get the COVID-19 vaccine even if it doesn't work?
Well, I think the thing with the flu vaccine is there are so many new flu viruses that come out a year, and they give you the primary 3 or 4 they think are going to be the biggest problem that year. Right. I believe that's what it is. So you could still get the flu. Maybe your symptoms are reduced because of that. You know, could there be mutations to the COVID, the virus through this particular coronavirus? Sure. And then maybe you might be protected. Sure. But you're always taking a risk. And I think the risk for vaccination is much, much smaller than the potential that it has to do harm for yourself, your family, those around you, and the world in general.
Yeah, we're still on the fence here about them, so that's why we asked. That was some good info about that.
So why are you on the fence? Why are you on the fence?
Well, I mean,
that's not for us to say now, really, you know.
Okay, yeah, no, you don't have to. Yeah, sorry.
No, but it's just like we would talk. It's just like it's we like to focus on the guest and not talk about ourselves.
That's great. Yeah.
No, it's just any closing I guess I could throw one more at you.
Yeah, go for it.
I don't want to assume anything. So Trump or Biden?
Biden, I think by default. I'm disappointed that he's the candidate right now. That could just be because I don't have enough information. I don't know. I liked Elizabeth Warren. I liked Andrew Yang.
Andrew Yang, he doesn't get a lot of airtime. Yeah,
yeah. I think that Warren's incredibly intelligent. She's a Harvard law professor. She comes. I like the way she speaks about issues. She knows policy. She's strong. She's strong in her opinions. I think she's a great leader. Yang, because he spoke about two things that are really important, and I do some performance art about this: artificial intelligence and universal basic income. And the way I compare Andrew Yang talking about that today is like somebody in 1996 saying, "Hey guys, the internet's going to be really important in about 10 years. Let's get on it."
Right. What?
You know, we're a few years away from AI becoming really, really developed, and it could potentially wipe out human jobs. That we don't know, but definitely the rise of tech threatens human jobs, and there are countries implementing. Yeah,
absolutely. But who's why? Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
Why do you think Andrew Yang and Elizabeth Warren did so badly in the primaries?
I don't know. I really don't know. I have no idea. I think there's this idea that we have a tradition of anti-intellectualism in America, and maybe that's the result of it. I could see that. Yeah.
And also, you said that you will vote for Biden by default.
Yeah.
Do you think Biden will win?
I hope so. I don't know that he can. I don't know that he can combat Trump.
What does your logical mind say, Giorgio Rosa? Do you think he can?
Yeah, because I don't do predictions on this stuff. My logical mind says, I hope so. I don't know. I don't personally see him being able to face up to Trump in terms of like in the moment verbal acuity. You know, I think we can never underestimate Trump personally.
Well, it's going to be fascinating anyway, no matter what happens.
Absolutely. And actually, one last kind of romantic question.
Of course.
What is your ideal vision for the future of humanity?
That's a huge question.
You know, I kind of like the idea of think global, act local.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that influences performance art. You know, see more things locally. Don't sit. And I also think that people are going to get tired of streaming shows on Netflix. You know, if they haven't already in about 2 weeks, we're going to get tired of Zoom show. Although Zoom is a great service, we're going to get tired of Zoom meetings.
They're not going to get tired of the Dave and Ed podcast, though.
No. Podcasts are here to stay. Podcasts are accepted, man. Podcasts are great, and but I think people are going to want to do more local events, outdoor events, maybe smaller businesses. I personally kind of buy into the capitalist thing, so I like to see, you know, democracy, whatever Western, you know, liberal democracy. But really, I think I like that idea of maybe acting locally, buying locally, local produce, supporting local farmers, local businesses. So that everywhere in the world is interesting to visit. You know, traveling is great. But you know, why do people always want to travel to Paris? Paris is dirty like New York. I love Paris, but it's because they have all these local stores that they don't go out of business. That don't become, you know, they still have a local flavor. People love that. I
mean, Ed has a connection with Paris. But
it's true. Yeah. That's true. But I keep saying this, and I mean it this time. This is like a clown routine. One last question.
Go for it.
Some people say, Neil, that astrologists that I've become acquainted with claim that by December 21st of 2020, a lot of issues will be resolved, and we may have a kind of a peace on earth type situation. Do you have any intuition or any feeling around that idea, that concept?
That's a great vision. I like the way that feels.
It's a great vision, all right.
Dave is cynically laughing at it. That's okay. That's okay. That's quite all right.
I'm cynically laughing.
But do you think peace on earth can be established? We can end all the conflict? Is that conceivable? Do you think?
I think peace on earth is a very, very broad, general, okay. So I think when you do psychic work, it's important to, what do you want world peace? When do you want it now?
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yes.
We want it now.
Now. When do you want it? That's like a chant.
Exactly.
Okay.
But, how can we individually contribute right now in our lives to world peace and make that sustainable? That's where you start to ask more psychic questions. So are enough people on board? Are enough people sick of sitting in their homes? Are enough people willing to get out there and help others? Are enough people willing to be active? It's about people, man. It's not about the stars. Maybe they influence things, but it's about people.
Good. Very well said. I concur with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much, George.
That was a great chat. I think
Yeah, absolutely. Great, guys. A lot of fun.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you.
Giorgio
Thank
Rosa,
you.
ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for Giorgio Rosa.
Yeah, Giorgio Rosa.
Rosa, have a good night.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
Bye-bye.